welcome to episode number 8 of Tuning In with Your Cycle. Today I'm going to talk about 10 things you should be tracking right now to create cycle awareness. And before I jump into these 10 things, I want to invite you to my brand new masterclass, Stop Having Painful Periods. 4 steps to use science-backed nutrition to improve PMS, cramps, and mood swings, because these do not have to be your normal. And this is happening next week. I have 2 dates for it. One, it's March 8 at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And the second one is March 10th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So I hope to see you there. I'm going to link the URL below if you want to join, and if not, you can send me a direct message and I can send it to you right away. Okay, so now let's jump into these 10 things. So tracking, as I said at the beginning of this series, like one thing you need to start doing right now is tracking your cycle, because this is an insight on what's going on in your body, in your health. By tracking your cycle, also you're going to be able to predict when your mood is going to shift, when your energy is going to shift, and it's going to help you make a better decision on what you want to do in specific days, right? Because as we've been talking throughout this series, let's say during your luteal phase, you feel more like nesting, you feel like staying at home, you have less energy than during ovulation phase. So by tracking your cycle, you'd be able to kind of like book social events whenever you feel more energetic, whenever you feel like hang out with people, which is more follicular ovulation phase. And maybe you want to book like just like a stay-at-home date with your partner, or just like have friends like in your house to watch a movie or something during your luteal phase. So by tracking your cycle, you'd be able to make better decisions, and you will learn how to say no to some things, you know, because usually when we are in our follicular and ovulation phase, we tend to say yes to everything, right? Because right there we're feeling like hang out with people, we're feeling energetic. But then when we say yes, we may not consider that I don't know, that certain party or that certain thing we said yes, it's going to be during our luteal phase or during our menstrual phase, and we're really, during those phases, we really don't feel like hanging out. So by tracking your cycle, you're going to be able to make decisions based on that, and that's not only going to help you, but it's also going to create stronger relationships, right? Because let's say your partner comes to you during your luteal phase and he invites you to have a dinner and then like go dancing and all of that, and you don't feel like it, but you feel bad with him saying no, and then you go out, but you're not 100% there. So he's like, what's wrong with you? And you're like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. And then some arguments may start because of that, right? So tracking your cycle, it's super important, not only to see what's going on with your health, but also really to strengthen your relationships and to make wiser decisions. Okay, so the first thing you need to be tracking in your cycle is the length of your cycle. So a normal cycle goes around 21, that's very little, but that's very short, but it's actually considered normal, from 21 to 35 days. So a normal cycle for you would be if you always have if it always lasts, let's say 21 days, or if it always lasts like 28 days. If that happens every single month, then that means you have a regular cycle, right? Now, if it's usually around 27, 28, 29 days, it's totally okay. +2, -2 days, it's totally within the range, right? But when it becomes irregular is if it's like 21 and then the next time it's 45 and the next time it's 30 and the next time it's 28. That's what you need to write down, because that's an irregular cycle, and that it's telling you that something is up, mostly that you are not ovulating. Remember last episode? It's that. So keep note on that. The second thing you want to be tracking is your period length, okay? So you track your period. The first day that it's considered your menstrual phase is when you have a full bleed. Remember, some people get like spotting the day before and it's just a very mild bleed. That's not the first day. The first day is when you are full on out bleeding, okay? So you count that, and you count how long it is. If it's like 5 days, if it's 3 days, if it's 7 days. It is really, really important to track that down, okay? Because remember that your cycle, like our cycle, is considered a 5th vital sign, along with body temperature, blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing rate, okay? So it's super important to track that down. Then another thing I want you to be tracking is your flow, okay? So now you're gonna track how long does your cycle last. You're gonna track how long do you bleed, but now you're gonna track your flow. So here I divided it into flow. When you're bleeding, it's gonna be your blood, and I want you to track how much you're bleeding and what color it is, right? Because it's super important. We talked about in I think it was episode 2, red flags of your menstrual cycle. So it's really important to know what color and how much you are bleeding. And once you're past your bleeding days, it's very important to track also your cervical mucus, right? So that's part of your flow. So at the beginning of the follicular phase, it's going to be a little bit dry, but then it's going to turn into egg white. So I want you to track everything around those lines, so that way you identify when are your dry days, and then you start identifying when it's kind of around your ovulation, which it takes me to number 4 thing you need to track. It's ovulation. So again, we saw it, I think, I don't know, episode number 5, how to check if you're ovulating. So number 1, basal body temperature. But if you're not checking your basal body temperature because it's complicated, because you wake up at different times every day, because you just don't know how to do it, if you don't know how to do it, just check that episode or send me a message and I can teach you how to do it. But if you don't do that, just your cervical mucus can say a lot. So if it's like egg white and it happens, it usually lasts like 5-6 days, less can be 3 days. It depends on each person. That's why it's important to track. But as long as you're having that egg white consistency, then that means that you are ovulating. So track that down. Ovulating is extremely important. Whether you're trying to conceive or not, it's basic, because through ovulation is what we produce progesterone. Now progesterone is super important for bone health, for metabolism, for your hair, skin, nails. Like, it's super important, even to prevent osteoporosis later on in life. So it's super important to ovulate, and it's super important to track that down. Now, number 5, your mood, okay? I want you to track how your mood is throughout the month. So today you felt happy, or maybe tomorrow you feel like irritable, but maybe the next day you're happy again. So I want you to track that, because as you start tracking your cycle, you're gonna identify patterns that repeat each time. So maybe you're gonna notice that during your PMS week you're more irritable, but like during your follicular phase you are happier. And even though we're meant to feel like that, everybody feels different, right? So track that down. Maybe you felt anxious, maybe you felt, I don't know, whatever you're feeling, track that down, because it's super important. Then number 6, energy. I want to track your energy. You have to track your energy levels. Your energy was low, was normal, you felt really energetic. Track that down, okay? Then number 7, I want you to track your stress levels, right? Because remember, stress sometimes may block ovulation, may deplete progesterone. So it's really important to track how stressed have you been, because maybe you're usually regular, maybe your period's usually 28 days, but you've been under a lot of stress lately, and then it happened after 35 days, or it just didn't come and it was completely MIA this month, right? So track how stressed you are. Then number 8, I want you to track your sleep. Sleeping is super important, but it does change throughout the cycle. So usually during your follicular and ovulation phase, you sleep less, but because maybe you're usually going to bed at 10 p.m. and waking up at 8, let's say, but you're gonna notice that maybe during your follicular ovulation phase, you're gonna be waking up earlier, like at 6, and naturally waking up before your alarm. So start tracking how you feel. Remember, progesterone slows you down, so maybe at the beginning of your luteal phase, you are sleeping really good and you're sleeping more hours, so track that down. And maybe, and a lot of us experience that before period, we actually have insomnia, or our sleep is interrupted because we keep waking up in the middle of the night. So track that down and start identifying that, because not enough sleep or lack of sleep can really mess up with your hormones. So identify if your sleeping pattern is normal, if it repeats, if it goes according to your hormones, or if it's all over the place, because that might be affecting your hormonal balance and maybe causing a bit of estrogen. It may delay ovulation, so check that down. It's super, super important. Then number 9 is gonna be symptoms. What are you feeling? Maybe at the beginning of your cycle you don't feel anything, but maybe once you hit ovulation, during ovulation, maybe you have breast tenderness, or you feel bloated, or you have like ovary pain, or you have like your back's hurting. Track any symptom, because you're gonna notice, again, as soon as you start tracking your cycle, how some of these symptoms repeat, and it's just a pattern. So once you identify that pattern, you're gonna be ready, you're gonna be prepared for that to come, right? And it's a really great way to start directly syncing with your cycle, okay? And the last one I want you to track is if you took any medications. If you took ibuprofen, naproxen, anything that you have taken, when and why. So it's probably going to be related to one of your symptoms. So next to it, write I took naproxen or I took ibuprofen, because we want to identify some things here. So some NSAIDs or like painkillers are related to blocking ovulation, right? So if you notice that maybe you're having a migraine on your day, I don't know, 7 of your cycle, and then you're taking a lot of ibuprofen, and then you notice that your periods are irregular, or you notice that you don't have that egg-white consistency, which means you may not be ovulating, then that may be around that line. So that's going to help us get to the root cause of what's causing you to take that ibuprofen, to have that headache, and then that's kind of doing a replay effect of making you not to ovulate, right? So that's why it is super important. And I know it sounds like a lot. 10 things you're gonna be, Maria, it sounds like a lot, but honestly it is not. Like, once you write this down, you can just describe them in one word. So you can be mood, happy, tune. It's just like literally one word next to each. It won't take you more than 2 minutes to track this down. Just take note right now on what you need to be tracking, and once you get into the routine, it's going to be super easy. By the end of each cycle, just compare, and once you start collecting different cycles, start comparing, start putting your pages together, and then just lay them down and identify your pattern, because this is the #1 thing to start syncing with your cycle, and by creating cycle awareness. Okay? I know that feels like a lot, but it actually isn't. So just as a quick recap, the 10 things you need to be tracking is your cycle length, your period length, your flow, whether it's the color of your bleeding, how much you're bleeding, or your cervical mucus. Number 4 is ovulation. Number 5, mood. Number 6, energy. 7, stress levels. 8, sleep. 9, your symptoms. And 10, if you took any medications. Okay? That's it. If you have any questions, let me know. And also remember, show up for this masterclass, because even if you have a ton of questions and if you want to like really deep dive into cycle syncing, we're gonna have a Q&A, a live Q&A at the end of this masterclass. So anything or any concern you have, we can address it right there. Okay, so I hope to see you there, and I'll see you later.